Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Burning Hints Fantasy Football. We're going to be going over our Dynasty League a little bit, going over each team. We're going to be going over predictions for the playoffs for this week, and then we're going to be going over daily fantasy lineup for this week's playoffs. Not really daily, but basically weekend fantasy. All right, so let's just get it right going. We're going to start with you and then me, and then we're going to go down the list for fantasy teams right here because that's just what the draft says, even though it's not in order. So I'm just going to go over what I sort of like and dislike about your team. One scary but like kind of interesting thing is that quarterback, whether Fields is pops off next year. Then what happens with Matt Ryan? They say Atlanta wants him, but there's a lot of teams looking for a veteran quarterback, so it's possible that he gets into like a new, better situation rather than Atlanta. The one thing I really like about your team is your receivers and tight end. I think you have really, really strong receivers, and then they could last you. They're here to stay for the most part. Brown, Jefferson, and Hill. I mean, maybe won't last forever, but I think you're good for a while. And then you have got some good young talent with Patrick, and then I saw some other guys down there. Patrick having just like a guy from Green Bay, Scantling, it's always good. But bench is always a little interesting. And then you got Michael Thomas, which is also awesome to have, and we'll see what happens whether he's with the Saints or not. And then running backs is sort of you got the double Dallas, and then Gibson's good, but you can't be strong everywhere. I feel like in this league. What do you think about your team?
Yeah. My big two red flags is because I went through and ranked every team, and I gave myself the worst QB situation in the entire league. It's not great with Matt Ryan being probably my most consistent when he's very inconsistent. And I also think my running backs aren't great. I'll definitely be looking to find another running back, but wide receiver wise, I'm stacked personally. I ended up giving myself the second best wide receiver core. They're all extremely young, and it looks pretty solid. And Michael Thomas will be back, and hopefully not with the Saints.
Yeah, unless the Saints get Wilson or something.
Yeah. Also, just to address something, I did give up Mike Evans for Odell, basically. Wasn't really what I wanted to do, but during the whole draft, I actually messed it up where Stein locked in McLaurin. Wilburn drafted him, so I got McLaurin back to him and then compensated Wilburn with Evans.
Yeah, I was wondering how someone got Evans when I was looking through it all.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it, but I needed to make I didn't want to be hey Wilburn, your third pick in the supplemental draft. You don't get him, instead you get Odell.
Yeah.
So
it happens. All right. Well,
I bit the bullet.
I think we're both pretty on the same page that you have a more middle of the pack thing. It's not loaded, but it's in good spirits, I guess. The draft, you have to look for a running back or potentially a quarterback, but we'll see. So we're going with my team, and I used to love my quarterbacks, but now I'm basically riding on the Deshaun Watson train, hoping that he plays. I was happy to have Marcus Mariota because there's potential maybe he gets a chance next year. My running backs I do not like. Chubb's nice, but Edwards-Helaire has been not exactly what you want. Carter wasn't crazy about, but I guess it's nice. I like Sanders, but again, he's inconsistent, and then Sermon is sort of up in the air, and then I don't really have that much in the bench area. I mean, Tyson Williams maybe, but it doesn't look like he's getting the touches. I quite like my receivers a little bit, at least the top end. I like my top three. The issue is just, for a lot of things, is bench. Hoping Slayton's stuck in New York with all these other guys. Samuel's been hurt. I like Davis, but then I've got Beasley and a bunch of just prayers. And I think the one thing I'm trying to go for is I'm seeing more and more people load up on tight end, so I went after Hayden Hurst, and I'm hoping that I think tight end is just going to just solve a lot of deficiencies for teams that just don't have even like viable players that won't even get touches.
Yeah.
Hopefully Jordan Love, gets a chance, but you never know.
Yeah. So I put your quarterbacks in like the middle of the pack. Mostly because like Herbert is great and he's going to be fantastic next year and for like the next 10 years. But Watson's just such a big question mark. But if Watson can find a team, or even if Houston can find a way to keep him now that they might be bringing in Flores, then I think that gives, like, I'd rank you probably first or second in quarterback. Like, you'd be up there with, like, some of these other teams that have, like, a great 1-2 punch at QB. I ranked your wide receivers third, like Kupp, Hopkins, and DJ Moore. It's pretty solid. Like you basically have 2 guaranteed top 12, and if DJ Moore can get a QB, you have like 3 players right in that category. I didn't hate your running backs as much as like you're kind of criticizing yourself. I think CEH is going to get more and more touches as time goes on. And I think Michael Carter showed during his brief stint of being healthy and whenever he was the lead back that he's going to be a pretty dominant player.
Yeah, for me, it's like I feel like my running backs have a high ceiling but low floor, which is always scary.
Yeah.
Just with so many points going in for whatchamacallit. All right, we're moving on.
You also do have Miles Sanders. I will throw that out there.
Yeah.
Who I don't know what's going to happen there, but they did become more of a run-focused team in the second half, and I felt like it really really brought up his floor. Granted, he wasn't healthy for a lot of the time where like they were running it a lot.
Yeah, generally, whenever he got his touches, he produced. That's the thing with Sanders, but it's like, will he get his touches? So we're going to move on to a team I think we're both pretty high on, or somewhat high on. I'm pretty high on Nick P's team. It's hard not to love his quarterbacks. Rodgers is a little scary just for how long he's going to be playing that well, or where he's going to be next year. It's a little bit scary. I think Goff's like an okay backup, but with the expansion, everyone's quarterback stuff's going to be thin. That's just sort of how it's going to be. I like his running backs quite a bit. Jones has that contract, so long term he's probably there. Kamara, I think he's still got a couple more years, and Jacobs there for a while. I don't think he had like a crazy. Yeah, I like he does a good job of like picking up random running backs like he did in the other league, and making it sort of work. But there's no one that I'm like about. I kind of like the backups for Philly and Zach Moss a little bit, but I like his his receivers are kind of weak, but as his like tight ends make up for it with some strength. I thought he had some good. Yeah, he has Van Jefferson, Khalif Raymond. He has like some good people, and then Robert Woods on the IR, which kind of helps. And I didn't even realize he had Baker Mayfield. So that's pretty awesome. Wherever he goes or what he does, he'll probably be bouncing around the league potentially for the next couple of years. What do you think?
I thought his team was I ended up ranking his team second overall after going through everything. Having Allen and Rodgers as like your starting quarterbacks was fantastic. And then I thought running backs is like that's just such a solid squad of Kamara, Jones, and Jacobs. There were really no like areas on his team where I'm like you're super like where he's like really lacking anything. Like wide receiver is probably his worst spot, but I mean like you can't be upset with Amari Cooper, Metcalf, and Moore. He just needs more like I guess like probably like a stable receiver, but he kind of gets that out of the tight end position with Gronk and Hawkinson.
And I feel like if you're going to be weak in depth of any position, receiver is probably the one to be weak at because it's so easily replaceable.
Yeah.
And so many different guys can get touches on different teams. Whether it's like running back, you're looking at 1 or 2, and then quarterback is a whole other situation, then tight end's sort of a raffle.
Also, Allen Robinson's such a question mark because like he's a free agent, and I have no idea who's going to sign him, who's going to pick him up, who's this quarterback going to be. So all I know is he's not with the Bears next year.
It's a weird. It's a big receiver class coming into free agency, so we'll see what happens with that.
Because you have essentially last year's class that basically put everything on hold due to COVID, and they all took like 1-year deals.
Yeah, 1-year deals. I got tagged. So now we're going to move on to Greg's team, and Greg's team doesn't really. I don't think it's bad, but it's like kind of middle of the road. Quarterback's always a little bit scary with Tua and Kyler. His running backs, I love Swift. Connor, I'm still not like long term.
Yeah.
You know what it is, because a lot of this stuff. And then Mitchell, you like because he's starting now, but I think like basically one thing I've always thought about with this Dynasty League is just having a San Francisco running back is always a good idea because you never know what happens. It's been since Shanahan got there, they got McKinnon and like they got like 4 running backs and then used some random guy. They used like Mostert instead of like Coleman or McKinnon. So I love his receivers. Debo, Judy, Smith, all super young, all going to be super productive, and he's got Pitts, potentially like the best tight end to have like in this type of league. I'm a little worried about Thielen and what happens in Minnesota, but he's got strong bench. I think Foreman's nice to have for the future. I think Tennessee might hold on to him. I kind of like having Mostert and having like just possession guys that put up points like Crowder, Barrios, sort of that kind of stuff. I think you can do away with Rager and potentially Crowder. I think Crowder's getting up there, but he's got a lot of space on his bench to like acquire people over the offseason.
Yeah. I thought his team was kind of middle of the pack. I actually kind of disagree with you on the wide receivers. Like, I mean, I love Debo. Like, I think Debo is going to be great moving forward, but I am concerned about like where Jerry Jeudy what Jerry Jeudy ends up becoming. Mostly because like there's so many mouths to feed there between KJ, Tim Patrick, Sutton, Jeudy, Fant, and then they don't have a quarterback to get them the ball. Like maybe they go out and get someone this year, but like they went out and got Bridgewater this year. Like, who are they going to go out? Like, go pick up Baker? Like, do you really think Baker is going to be the guy that can feed all those mouths? Because, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not huge on Jeudy until they find a quarterback. And so for this, like, he's kind of, like, lower down for me. And then Smith, I think, is extremely talented, but I'm also concerned that he's going to run into the same problem that like you have with Hollywood Brown, where he's fantastic and if he gets gets enough targets, but like there's always like there's gonna be like 20 passes in that like for that team.
Yeah.
And how many of those does he get? Like he doesn't have a lot of target volume.
Yeah. I think
he really needs to take one to the house. But,
yeah, I think, but it's just I think being like where he was in his rookie year was a little bit of a surprise to me for how bad I thought the Eagles were going to be.
Yeah.
And we'll see what the stride is. Jeudy does definitely scare me, especially long term, just because they paid Tim Patrick and Sutton. So, either someone's getting traded or he's not getting the second contract in Denver. And unless they get, Wilson or Rodgers, I'm not like crazy. Because I don't think there's any way they're going to get Carr in division. Because I know people are talking about Carr potentially moving around, but maybe Cousins or something might be able to get his.
Cousins, and I guess Cousins I'd kind of be on board with. Like he's done pretty well with making sure that Jefferson gets his touches, and Thielen's been pretty good. So
yeah, great for fantasy outlook. Maybe not so much for win-loss outlook, but
yeah. But I do like his bench as well. I think that he has some pretty solid pieces on there that are good to have.
Yeah, it's solid. I'm not sure Heineke will be worth anything, but
no.
At this point, it's. I think we're playing like a QB hoarding. Game here. So his Stein's got his stuff a little bit mixed up, but I'm pretty sure he has McLaurin and then someone else on the bench. McLaurin. Oh,
I
jeez.
have McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, and Chase as his starting wide receivers, and then like his bench is Parker and ETN,
Yeah, ETN
or his
is huge
flex.
having. Yeah, but I love his quarterbacks. I don't think Lawrence is gonna be doo next year. I think it's gonna be fine. Especially depending on, well, maybe if they get another terrible head coach, but if it's someone that's solid that knows offensive stuff, I think he's gonna put up decent numbers. And then Mahomes is obviously great. I was a little bit on the fence with the running backs. I love Harris, but Barkley and Eckler sort of scare me a little bit. How long is Eckler going to be there, and then what's up with Barkley, and where is he with the Giants, and what's going to happen? But I love his youth. Like he has really good. Like
Hmm.
I guess they're not rookies anymore, but rookies from this past year: Harris, ETN, Chase, and I thought he had one more. I could be wrong, but looks like I'm wrong. Um, but it's nice that he has Tannehill, and I kind of like Davis Mills, but it seems like no one else really likes Davis Mills.
I
I'm not
like
sure he's gonna
Davis
get it.
Mills.
Yeah, it's weird. They're like people are like, oh, he'll be a good career backup, but I'm like, maybe he deserves a little bit more shot. But for me, I think this team is a little bit weaker. I feel like there's a lot of question marks, like guys like Devontae Parker, Traquan Smith, or how are they going to be? Where are they going to be next year? Jamal Williams, how long will he be doing stuff like what he did this year? It's a lot of question marks for me on this team.
Mhm. I just pulled up his stats because I wanted to see. He had 4 games this year that he threw for 300 yards for Davis Mills as a rookie.
Yeah, on Houston.
Yeah, with like no like best wide receivers is Cooks, and that's fantastic. But outside of that, there was no run game, no other receivers to really note. So I mean, I think Davis Mills, for me, I think like he's a great person to have on your bench moving forward. Um, so
Yeah,
I think I actually would say I like Davis Mills more than Lawrence after watching their first year in the NFL.
I
Um,
could see where you're coming from with that. I love his just. I think he might have the strongest QBs, but outside of that, I don't think it's like the strongest team.
I ranked his running back second. Maybe not moving forward in longevity, but at least for next year's season.
Yeah,
Like if Barkley can stay healthy, you have a top 24 back. Najee's going to be top 12 and Eckler's top 12, and I think that's just a great combo.
hmm
And then you also have great wide receivers, like not great, where you're like, I have Devontae Adams, but like Deontay Johnson is just the definition of steady Eddie, basically.
yeah,
McLaurin, if they can get a decent quarterback there, he's set. And Chase, I think if we were to do a startup draft right now, he would be the number one wide receiver off the board.
definitely. Yeah, I think it'd be Chase, and then just Chase in Jefferson. You're looking at, but Jefferson doesn't have a stable situation like Chase does.
Yeah.
Really, the only thing that's going to hold him back is potential injury. So, what do you think about the team? Are we to rank this at all? I still sort of have middle lower area.
I have this team overall in like the lower area. I think that he still needs to go out and get a little bit more depth of like startable assets for his flex position, and I don't love his tight end, and I don't think that you can rely on Lawrence to be your number 2 starting quarterback all year. I think like you might need to go out and find someone else and make a trade to shore up that number 2 QB if you really want to compete for a title.
Yeah, I like Tannehill a little bit, but yeah, it's like a lot of question marks on this team just in general. He definitely needs to shore up tight end because Goddard's not enough, and I wouldn't rely on Tunyon coming back and being what he was the year before.
Yeah.
Um, so Alex's team, we're both pretty high on him, and he had like a crazy good team that he had to give up Tom Brady because he had his quarterbacks was so strong.
Yeah.
So he's got two of the best running quarterbacks right now. He's got Cook, who's not like it's a little scary long term, but I think he's still good for a couple of years. Montgomery, who's really solid, and I think he's got one more.
Derrick Henry is the third running back.
Yeah, I was gonna say he has some. Yeah, okay. He has Derrick Henry, and then also having Calvin Ridley is huge because apparently Ridley and the front office of Atlanta have agreed that they're going to try to move forward on a trade for him, and he wants out of Atlanta. So potentially he could be in a really, really good. It's all up in the air, but potentially could have a really, really good spot there. And then Waddle, one of the best rookies. You know, if it wasn't for Chase, we'd be talking about Waddle. Adams is great
Yeah.
for a while. We don't know what's happening with him long term, being a free agent this year. But Williams, he's a free agent too. He could have either stay in charge or land, or I think he'll be fine anywhere. Pittman, young receiver, rising. Waller's going to be here for a while. He just got a really solid team and like solid young players. Like Kirk, I like. Gage in Atlanta, I like right now. He picked up the guy with Westbrook at a Tennessee, and then Jennings. I don't know if you saw him last week in the
Yeah.
playoff game.
And
He played well.
Mhm.
So he might. I'm not sure if he's going to take Ayuk's spot, but he might be there for at least a while. And Smith Schuster's a nice guy just to have going into free agency.
Yeah. This is my favorite team. I think he has the best quarterbacks, the best running backs, and the best starting wide receivers. And I didn't even include Ridley in that. I actually put Pittman in because I'm not sure what Ridley's situation is. So I mean, his starters are basically stacked. If I were to do anything for I don't know where he would in this upcoming draft. I don't know where he would be looking to improve. Probably maybe a running back or a wide receiver to kind of shore up the bench. Try and maybe find another flex player. But I mean, I think Jackson and Hurts are both going to be just fine next year. I mean, Jackson was on pace to have a pretty solid season before he got hurt. And I think Hurts will, as bad as he looked in that playoff game, I think he'll probably end up being the starter next year. And I don't see them going out and picking up a quarterback. But if they draft a quarterback in the first round, that could really put a dent in that quarterback ring. So.
Yeah, I would say the one thing would be potentially getting one of the rookie quarterbacks to come out of the draft on his team, just because it's nice that he has Minshew and Hurts, so that helps you with injury. But with Lamar getting hurt this year, having those running quarterbacks is a little scary. But maybe Cam Newton becomes the backup in Baltimore. Maybe that works out. But I think Huntley is safe there. But if you can grab Huntley, I mean, that would be a
That'd be smart.
Heck of a play. I don't think we've seen Huntley yet, so we'll find out who exactly has them. But you were both very high on Alex, one of the stronger teams, and I mean he dominated this year in terms of point total.
Just fell apart in the playoffs.
Yeah, not having Derrick Henry hurts, even if it's 20 players on your team. And now we're gonna go on to Lestrange, and Lestrange I think we're both very high on as well. He's got just a really strong and young team. Prescott and Burrow, they're there. You don't really have to worry about it. Injuries, the only thing you're gonna worry about, and everyone has to worry about injuries. Dylan Akers Williams, crazy that Akers is back and now makes his team look amazing.
Also CMC.
Yeah, CMC's on the bottom down there. It's just, I mean, really good. Dylan's
I think
a
those
little
running
bit.
backs are going to be really up there next year. It'll be interesting to see how high up Javonte Williams is on if Denver brings back Gordon or not.
Yeah, I think Javonte is going to take another step forward. The scary one's Dylan just because he's behind Jones, but it looks like Dylan's at least getting some work. And I like D'Ernest Johnson as his other backup because we don't know how long Hunt and Chubb, and it seems like they both, well, at least one of them gets hurt throughout the year. So there's always some sort of push for that. And then he's got great, I wouldn't say great, but strong receivers. I like Hollywood Brown. I like CeeDee Lamb. And then Godwin, we'll see where he goes. But I think he's just one of those guys that he's a possession receiver. He's going to get his touches. I think he's got an okay bench.
Okay, bench.
I like Callaway. I like Peoples Jones. I like Lazard, and I like Bourne. I mean, Robert Anderson's okay if he has a better receiver this year, or not receiver, quarterback. Antonio Brown's funny to keep on. We'll see how long that lasts. And then he has well, I don't know exactly what's happening with Chark. I really should look up his contract because like the Jacksonville receivers are sort of strange this year. But QB is a little bit scary in terms of backups, what's happening with
Yeah.
Winston, and then what's going to happen with Jones. They're both question marks, but I think they're good guys to have. I think they'll find, at worst, really good backup spots. And Jones is a great guy to have as a backup just because his legs.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I really like his running backs. I think quarterbacks he's set for like the future basically. I wasn't as high on his wide receivers whenever I was looking around the league.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is Godwin. Like I don't know where Godwin's going to end up. Like there's no way he's back in Tampa next year. I just don't see how they find a way to maneuver the cap to get him there. The only reason why they got him this year is because they're just franchise tagged him.
Yeah.
And then Hollywood, same problem as Devontae Smith for me. There's just not a lot of volume there in terms of passing. And they brought in Bateman, who I think is going to become more of a possession receiver and is going to slowly take away targets from Hollywood. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with CeeDee Lamb. I was super high on him this year, but he didn't really break out to the level that people were expecting him to. And if Kellen Moore is gone next year, I don't know who McCarthy would bring in as his new offensive coordinator. And I don't know how much McCarthy's going to have at play calling next year. And I think that scares the crap out of me.
Yeah, I can see the question marks with that. It does help to have Andrews with Brown and just stacking those Baltimore guys because one of them is going to get, the majority at least.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrews having record-breaking season. But yeah, the receiver is definitely his weaker portion. But when you compare it to the strengths of the others, it's pretty insane.
Yeah.
But I think we're both pretty high on that team.
Yeah, I still have that team ranked like third overall for me. My big contenders next year are Lestrange, Nick P, and Alex. I think they're the teams that are really going to be fighting for a championship.
Yeah. I have those ones, and I have one other guy that I think is who I haven't gone over yet that I like his team quite a bit. Then we're going to go to Chris Smart's team, who's I wasn't super high on his team. I like Wilson, obviously. Wentz, very scary, especially after what the GM said this week, that basically it sounds like they might be moving on from him this year. Kelsey's nice to have, but age is a little bit of a concern. At some point, it's going to slow down. Keenan Allen, same idea. Higgins is great. I love Diggs. I'm not crazy about his running backs. Obviously, he has the best running back, but
Really?
yeah, Kareem Hunt doesn't inspire a ton of confidence, and Mixon. I don't know. He just something about Mixon. I'm not sure how long it's gonna last in Cincy. They got a lot of mouths to feed, and I'm not sure how long they're gonna keep him around. And as well as I think that they were giving him a lot more touches early on in the year, and they did a little bit in the middle. But early on in the year, it seemed like they were just really feeding Mixon because they were a little bit worried about Burrow. Because if you remember, a lot of people were worried about Cincinnati just in general starting the year with Burrow's injury coming back, weak O-line, and then Chase was not looking good in the preseason. Obviously, all that changed. But I think he's got a pretty solid bench. There are some players, but when you look at running back, it doesn't inspire a ton of confidence. I like his receivers in the bench, but yeah, it's a little bit of an older team, and it's a little bit scary. My mouse is terrible. So there's not a lot of assurances. I feel like with me for his team long term, like maybe next 2 years he can compete, but he's going to have to do some bench development.
Yeah. I mean, I think for next year, I think his running backs are some of the best, like Jonathan Taylor, Joe Nixon, and I mean, Kareem Hunt was hurt for a lot of this year, but like you look back like the year before, he was the number 6 running back, I'm pretty sure, in the entire season. So for 2020.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that he'll probably bounce back, and I think running backs will be fantastic for him. I think wide receivers will be. I think he's got a chance to compete for this upcoming season, but he needs to find a few things, and those big things are he needs to find some solid guys for the flex spot, because I'm not sure if Bateman's going to be it, because again, small pie, and I don't know if Chris Carson's going to be the starter for the Seahawks running backs. And then quarterback wise, like I like Wilson, but Wilson's always kind of been that quarterback that he's amazing for half of the season and awful for the other half. And then to combine that with Wentz, who you're not even sure if he's going to be the starter, I think that's a very scary spot. So I think Chris has some areas that he needs to debate on if he wants to compete this year or if he wants to compete further down the road. Because there are some players on his team like Travis Kelce who still has a lot of trade value right now, but might not in a year or two. So if he's going to try and win this year, keep him. But if you're not really thinking you're going to be winning this year, it might be smarter to move on from Kelce and get some. I mean, I think you could probably pull a first-round pick for Kelce and a few other things.
Yeah, I would say like Kelce and a quarterback, draft pick and a quarterback. Because we don't know what Darnold's going to be. I don't think he's going to be the starter. And then you potentially just have one starter in your team right now. So that can be a little scary. So Chris Moore, I think he has a lot of top-end talent, but there's a lot of shakiness to the roster in general. It's nice that he has like guys like Julio Jones and Sanders, but again, they're not last. You know, you're on like 1 or 2 years with them. So one team I really liked out of the expansion draft was Dad's team. I quite like Dad's team. So Stafford and Carr, I both like, and Carr might be on the move, but I think regardless of where he goes, he's going to still be one of the better quarterbacks, especially in fantasy, just the volume that he goes. My only concern is maybe Pittsburgh, but they have good receivers there that I think he can do. I like his receivers, and I like none of it's super strong, his team, but there's like a lot of depth to it and a lot of like potential for it. So like I like his running backs, Penny, Edmonds, in terms of like ceilings. They've all really low floors, and same thing with Fournette. Because I think Brady's going to be there one more year. I think Fournette's going to be there one more year. So you're looking at one more year with them. So he's going to have to draft.
Don't think Fournette's under contract next year.
Yeah, I just assume. Why would you move on from him at this point? The year he had, and I don't really see him. Why would you want to move on? I like Robinson. I like Stevenson. And then St. Brown is one of my favorite players. Just long term. And
another rookie wide receiver.
Yeah, he's got Evans. He's got Renfro. He's got Kadarius Toney. He's just got a lot of like Dawson Knox, like guys that like aren't great, but they're like solid point gets. I don't think McKissick's gonna be back, so that's a little bit scary of where he goes. But having Jones with Fournette too is kind of nice. Hubbard, he's gonna get touches at least the next like year or two. I don't think he's a great guy, but you got Cooks too, like Gallup. Who knows where he goes? There's just a lot of potential with the team, but not a lot of for sureness.
So I was not like I ranked this team down towards the bottom. Both expansion draft teams. I think his receivers are pretty solid with St. Brown, Evans, and Cooks. I don't think he really has to worry about that. And I thought he had a lot of depth at tight end that he could kind of pick and choose what he needed to play each week between Schultz and Knox and Ertz if Ertz is back in Arizona next year. I wasn't as big on his QBs and running backs. That was where I really kind of knocked him down. I think Stafford's a good like a good guy and like a great quarterback to have, but he was very hit or miss this year. And Carr never had any big ceiling games this year. And if he's back with the Raiders, I don't see that happening next year. And running backs, my thing was I think Fournette and Penny are both extremely talented, but neither one has a contract for next year. Connor might be stealing touches from Edmonds still, so it's just kind of like a murky running back situation right now. Now, it could turn around and Penny gets re-signed by Seattle, Fournette gets re-signed, Connor's out in Arizona, and then I think he's got a pretty solid lineup right there at running back, and it could be immediately competing for a championship. Especially if Carr were to go to like Denver or Pittsburgh, where he'd have more passing options than Darren Waller.
Yeah, I like Pittsburgh just because the amount of short passes they do. They just basically treat it like another running game. And then he has Robinson and Stevenson, who are both solid running backs. We don't know where Robinson will be next year exactly, but just seeing Cam Akers come back after 6 months, generally, pretty much any major injury makes me hopeful now. But yeah, we're gonna be on different sides. I just like the potential, and it's just kind of it's an interesting team to watch. It could totally crap out and be awful, but also I think it could really work out. Now we're going to the other expansion team, and I think outside of his quarterbacks, I'm not a big fan of this team at all. He's got really good quarterbacks. That's nice. He can potentially trade some guy. I'd probably look toward trading the older guys because I think Wilson and at least Mac Jones, you're going to get solid production for at least like 4 or 5 years. Wilson, you never know. But just looking at who you're going to start at running back, who are you going to start at running back? You got Dobbins.
Yeah. For me, I whenever I made his roster for him, I was like, he's going to start probably Gordon because I can't imagine Gordon after the season he has, he doesn't get a role somewhere that he can be a starter if Denver doesn't bring him back.
Yeah.
I think Singletary has locked up the starting running back position, and I think Dobbins will be the starter coming back next season.
Yeah, if Singletary continues what he did at the end of the year, but he burned me before, so I'm not super high. Henderson's nice to have, but it looks like Cam Akers is back, and then Patterson, I just don't have any total 1 year of him actually being successful.
And he's 31 years old, I think, right now, so that's pretty rough at the running back position.
Yeah, and then receivers, there's guys, but Claypool, Sutton, Boyd, Lockett, and then Galladay, who the hell knows? I do like his tight ends, Gesicki and Smith and Henry, but you're gonna have to look to try to trade one of these New England guys. So what do you like from this? Despite fending off your cat.
Same thing as you, where it's quarterbacks are his best spot, but he's still not got elite talent at quarterback, like moving forward. I agree with you. I think maybe trading like Brady to Chris Smart and picking up some draft picks or Cousins to Chris Smart could really solidify his team. Sorry. Getting attacked by a cat. But I think trading Cousins or Brady would probably be a smart move. And then just trying to build up through the draft, because I think he's got some players that he can kind of deal, but I think he is definitely missing enough there to be super competitive this year.
Yeah. All right. Wrapped up our Dynasty League. We're gonna go into a short little playoff predictor, and I'm just gonna go over my stuff real quick because it's not much has changed. I was able to successfully get the right matchups for week 1. and I'm just gonna if the Rams defense looks like it did last week, I'm pretty confident against the Bucks. The Packers, I'm pretty confident against the Niners. I just don't think the Niners are going to dominate them like they did the last couple times, and no Mike Pettin this time that Shanahan knows to destroy his defense. I think it's going to have a little bit uh, tougher time. What do you think about the NFC?
So my picks like are both still alive. I am definitely a little concerned about the Rams pick, or my pick of the Buccaneers over the Rams, but think I'm going to stick with the Buccaneers since that was my pick, and I'm definitely still sticking with the 49ers. I think they're going to be perfectly fine against Green Bay.
Yeah, it's going to be. I don't think there's any games here that's like I'm super confident in. When we go to the AFC, my least confident pick is the Chiefs over the Bills. Just pretty scared. I don't. The Bills defense just looks great, and I know Josh Allen had a great. He's just kind of been up and down all year, but I don't think he has to be amazing versus the Chiefs. I just think he has to do enough. But I'm going to stick with the Chiefs, and then the Bengals versus the Titans. It's the Titans are just so hard to predict, but I'm going to go with the Bengals, and I think they're just going to keep riding after getting that first win under their belt. They don't have to worry about all this 31 years bullshit, and they can maybe pull it out. But that's another. None of these I'm confident in.
Yeah. So I had the Bengals playing the Chiefs. I think that the Bills will do just fine against the Chiefs, and I think the Bills will win that game. And then in my other bracket, because I had the Bengals beating the Chiefs, I had the Bengals and Titans playing a round later, and I chose the Titans, and I'm going to stick with the Titans. So.
All right, we're pretty much completely opposites here. So we'll see.
We didn't make a single pick the same, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. All right, we're going to move on to daily fantasy for the week here. And basically, I don't think we're going to have similar lineups at all, just based on what we think is going to happen. So the way I did it for quarterback is I went with Rodgers.
Quick for last week, I finished with 110 points. Didn't really have anyone like break out and do anything amazing. A lot of players, like my big players, were like Dak, Cooper Kupp, who actually underperformed. I just had a lot of solid guys. You finished with 97, and your big problem was Sony Michel, and tight end pick wasn't great. But you did have Debo, who went off for 20. So
once I saw Cam Akers come out, I was like, oh, shit. And then, Derek Carr didn't really do all that much. So that was a little disappointing. I expected that to be a little bit more higher scoring, but so this week I'm really going with the Green Bay stack of Rodgers and Adams, and then I did Dillon as well, just because he was kind of cheap, and there's a lot of running backs I don't really like, but we'll go position by position. But I'm assuming you did some sort of stack with your quarterback as well.
Yes, I did do a stack as well, and my quarterback is Joe Burrow.
Okay, and then you went with what, Chase?
Yeah.
Okay. So anybody else you really like to take quarterback?
I mean, I think quarterback-wise, I think Josh Allen's going to be a great play this week. Mahomes is always a solid play. And cheaper down on the list is Tannehill, but I'm just concerned with Tannehill based on like the season that he's had and how much he's underperformed consistently.
Yeah, I think Stafford's a good cheaper player. They're not going to be able to run a lot, so it's going to be sort of on him. So that lends himself to possibly more points. Whether he will do that, that's another question, but the opportunity is definitely there. So running backs, did you at all flirt with Derrick Henry?
I did not. I thought it was too scary with him coming off the injury and being as priced as high as he is.
Yeah, I was like almost honestly looking for Foreman as a potential, just thrown in. I don't even see where he is. But who'd you go with at running back?
Running back, I went with Aaron Jones and Cam Akers. Um, I went with Aaron Jones because that was actually kind of like I was toying around with my lineup, and that's just kind of where like I realized I had enough money in the budget kind of to pick up Aaron Jones, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna do that, then like I think Aaron Jones is he's got he's always got that chance to go off for like 40 points. And I don't think he does that, but I think he'll get enough pass volume in this game that he'll be very relevant. So, and then Cam Akers, same thing. He's definitely going to be the running back that catches any balls that are thrown from Matthew Stafford from the backfield. And he looked like he wasn't hurt at all this year. And I think you've kind of seen cracks here and there in the Tampa Bay run defense. And I think Cam Akers could be one of the guys who gets in there.
Yeah, Cam Akers, I floated with it, but I was just like, I'm not gonna play with it against the Tampa Bay run defense. But he looked like pretty insane. One other player I was like looking at a little bit was Mitchell, but I went with AJ Dillon and I went with Fournette. I went with cheap guys. I just thought Fournette was like a good for the price. Was like I was pretty surprised just with his average points per game. And the price of the people around him, I was a little bit surprised that it was a little bit higher. Um, and like the one guy I was just like, no thanks, was Joe Mixon.
Yeah, same.
Not playing against that Tennessee defense. That's the one thing I'm definitely thing. And then I did go with Foreman. That's why I couldn't find him with the flex. But I just think will they give they gonna give Derrick Henry 20? They could. I don't think it's like impossible at all. But feel like they're probably gonna share carries a little bit. But who'd you like at receiver?
So receiver is where I spent a lot of money. I have Jamar Chase for my stack with Burrow. I grabbed Adams because I think Adams is a fantastic play. And then I went AJ Brown. Just because when AJ Brown's healthy, he can he'll have those games where he's just racking up like 10, 11 targets or 10, 11 receptions even some games. So I think AJ Brown since he's a pretty solid play because even if Henry's back and Henry's going off, that's even better for Brown because that means they're going to be trying to shut down the run.
Yeah, Keenan on the run there. So my first guy went with Adams as well to stack with Rodgers, and I went with Odell just because his just tight end his touchdown numbers are just great. He just seems to find the end zone. His normal production numbers aren't amazing or anything like that, but he's fairly cheap, and you're sort of looking for a touchdown at him. I was thinking a little bit about doing T Higgins. He's a similar price, but just didn't really work out for what I was doing. And I went with Julio Jones instead of AJ Brown. Just kind of, he was so cheap. I don't really have a lot of confidence in Julio. It was more like a salary decision because I wanted to get a big time tight end. And I just hopefully the run game does, and he just steals from AJ Brown instead. But I'm not super confident in that. Anyone else you were looking at receiver?
I mean, I also was looking at Ayuk because even with Jennings having a game last week, Ayuk had a better game still.
Yeah.
Maybe not in terms of touchdowns, but he's just been getting a lot of receptions and yardage, which for this being PPR and a cash pick, I thought it was a pretty safe pick. I also Evans has been dominant this year, so I liked Evans as well. I just didn't find a way to fit him into the lineup with I thought having Devontae Adams and AJ Brown and Chase was better.
You can only do so much.
Yeah.
So for tight end, I actually went with George Kittle. I just like him against Green Bay. It's sort of a good matchup, and with the lack of sort of production he had last week, I feel like he's in for a big week.
So I obviously have like no money left at this point, so I went with the $2,500 bare minimum OJ Howard, basically. Um, he had one reception on 3 targets last week, and for $2,500, that's acceptable.
Yeah. Just
Um,
trying to afford the receivers at that point. The one
and
guy was like,
if
you
he
go.
falls into the end zone with a touchdown, perfect. But
Yeah.
if not, the receivers
Best
will make
money
up
ever
for it.
spent. One guy I kind of like is Uzama. He performed pretty well, and I feel like they might be keying on the receivers. And then one guy I wanted to stay away from was just Dawson Knox after having that huge game. I didn't really want to double up on that. I felt like that was going to be like a scary matchup. Who'd you end up going with the flex?
My flex, I actually went with Van Jefferson.
I like that.
Just because of budget. Like I was honestly initially I didn't have AJ Brown in my lineup. I had Cooper Kupp in my lineup, but then once I was going through and I saw Van Jefferson at 4,200, I was like, I'm gonna put Van Jefferson in my lineup at that price. But I also knew that I didn't want to stack Rams wide receivers. So I took Kupp at that point out, put in AJ Brown because I liked him, and then put in Aaron Jones because I thought Aaron Jones was pretty
Yeah.
solid pick as well.
Okay. Sorry, my connection is unstable. You hear me? No. Okay. Well, moving on. Sorry, my connection's not great right now. So we're gonna go on
Okay.
to defense. I just picked the Bengals because they were cheap and that's what worked for me. I might actually change that. Um, but I think for now the Bengals might be able to get a couple turnovers on Tannehill. And I think that's going to be a kind of low scoring game.
I went with the Bills because like solid defense. I know the Chiefs are a good offense, but I mean, even still, you look at last week, Pittsburgh got a turnover, and Mahomes just hasn't been as perfect and flawless as he used to be, and I think that can lead to 1 or 2 turnovers, which will make the defense perfectly fine.
All right. Anything else you want to bring up here?
Nope, I'm just excited for this weekend of football.
All right, nice. We will see you guys